Good evening, 49er faithful. Here we are back again. Between Two Beards is here as always. I am your host, Rob Schuh. That's my co-host, Randon McMahon. And we are here to talk about the 49ers having completed the 2023 NFL draft. Randon, are you still hyped from the draft weekend?
No. Steep decline.
You're gonna tell me that this draft where we didn't have a first round pick, we didn't have a second round pick, we ended up taking a freaking kicker in this thing. You're gonna tell me that kind of enthusiasm hasn't carried forward for you?
I mean, we'll get into that, but no, it was a small lived moment and it's past. I appreciate the moment for what happened, but I'm ready to move on.
Ready to move forward. We're going to break it all down for you today. We want to say what's up to those that are here in the chat because we always appreciate those that are contributing to the dialogue. Cybers Niners 209 show is coming in to predict the Niners at Las Vegas Allegiant Stadium. I did see that the Niners, they're constantly throwing out those texts that are like, hey, we've got an auction going on. Come buy some of our stuff for charity. And I'm all about buying stuff for charity, especially if it's signed cleats or anything like that. I got my eye on some Christian McCaffrey game-worn signed cleats. Random, we'll see what happens there. But I saw they're selling off experiences. They have all of those. It's like, be down there with the flag patrol, sing the anthem, like all these sideline things. Obviously, you can't sing the anthem. I would sign up for that in a heartbeat. But they're selling a Super Bowl experience. It's like lower bowl seats, first class airfare, hotel, all of that for this upcoming Super Bowl. And below it, it says priceless. And I think to myself, like, that's a stretch right there. Like, you could put a pretty firm price tag on Super Bowl tickets, first class airfare, and a hotel. Yeah, the experience might be priceless if the Niners make it, but that's not a guarantee, unfortunately.
No, I mean, nothing's priceless. Everything has a price.
That's right. A clear price, probably a $20,000 price tag. Like 2 Super Bowl tickets, lower bowl. Those are $9,000 each, maybe $10,000 each. Damn. Plus the airfare. That's probably a $25,000 freaking package right there.
But Shanahan, like he said, we don't know if we're going to be alive on Sunday, so you might as well just spend your money, right?
You might as well. Let's start a GoFundMe on the channel. We've got a bunch of people that are ready to contribute to send you and I to the Super Bowl. Let's see if we can't make that happen. We got other folks here in the chat. Raphael 5629er, Sneakerhead here on the channel, always coming in to say good evening to myself, Randon, Sneakerheads, and everybody. Darren Worthington is here saying what's up to the faithful. Randall Riley is skipping ahead to our topic on Matt Maiocco. He says, has Matt gone nuts? And oh, by the way, hello to you both. Jim Tomsula fan. Man, there aren't many of those. But hey, I have Darnold in the same tier as Herbert after this season. Man.
And that's why you got to let go.
That is a bold prediction, and I dig it. I'm here for the bold predictions. Brett J, Sneakerhead here on the channel. Bro Montana in the house. What's up, fella? Bro Montana has changed to Brett J. I love it. Spy Nick Danger is here, and we've got Brett J coming in to show some love. Thank you, Bro Montana. Appreciate it. All right. Spy Nick Danger doing the good deed, reminding folks to hit that like button. All right, we're going to get into this thing, and we're going to start off on some topics that are prior to the draft. They're outside of the draft. One in particular, we are going to bring up PFF. PFF is always throwing out rankings and stack rankings and all of that. They are now putting this out, and this was NFL.com, PFF, the one that we're referencing here, NFL.com, but PFF also had the same 1 through 5 rankings, and that has the Niners at number 5 here in the power rankings. For both of those, they were 5 in the power rankings prior to the draft and 5 in the power rankings after the draft. They're behind only Philadelphia in the NFC. They're behind the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals in the AFC. Randon, is this a fair ranking?
Yeah, I mean, all the teams ahead of us have better quarterbacks. We have the most complete team. We didn't really lose anybody of significance. So, I mean, like, we were one quarterback away from being in the Super Bowl, one UCL away from competing. Whoa. So, like, we should be right there, right? We were in the top 4 last year. We didn't really lose anybody. We didn't really gain anybody besides Hargrave. But we lost another corner in Mosley. So, where does that angle out there? Can you expect CMC to be healthy for a full season? We don't know what's going on with the quarterback. So there's still a lot of uncertainty. For that much uncertainty, though, I mean, to be top 5, I think that's fair.
It really is remarkable to have that level of uncertainty, particularly at the fucking quarterback position, the most important position in the NFL. And Vegas, all the odds makers are like, we don't know who's going to be the quarterback for San Francisco. Yeah, they're the 5th best team in the league. It's remarkable to me. It speaks to what we were singing the 49ers praises all of last year, which ended up being true yet again, that they were, and I believe continue to be, one of the most talented rosters in the NFL, regardless of who's starting at quarterback. We could see a situation where Trey Lance is starting at the beginning of the season. You could potentially see a scenario where Sam Darnold is starting at the beginning of the season. You could certainly, if the timeline goes correctly, and we'll hit that later, you could potentially see a situation where Brock Purdy is starting the season. And in all of those scenarios, I do not think that Vegas will alter our line. I think they will see, hey, the Niners have these odds to be in the Super Bowl because of the entirety of that roster. And when I look at it, initially during free agency, I wanted the Niners to climb. I would have put them ahead of Philadelphia. I got to say, man, it pisses me off to no end to have to admit it, but it felt like in particular that first round and a lot of that draft fell in Philadelphia's favor. And they got better in that draft. So because of that, I begrudgingly say, yes, I agree. The Niners are at the appropriate spot, that Philly does belong one notch ahead in the NFC, and the AFC still has those heavyweight favorites.
I mean, look what happens when a GM bets on the quarterback that he actually drafted. Look what happens. Right. Great things, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe the 49ers could do, they can do the same because they have a quarterback that they drafted. They could bet on him.
They could.
And then maybe use their first round pick next year to better the team around him. I don't know about you, Rob, but that seems like a hell of a thought.
I mean, it is a continuous strategy, right? It is furthering what you set out to do from the outset. You had intention when you moved up from 12 to 3, when you selected Trey Lance, and you really have not ridden that plan to fruition. And I understand why. I mean, once Brock Purdy entered into the equation and performed in the way in which he did, it muddied the waters. And I guess I find myself in that stance of like, hey, he's earned that position. But I'm with you. We now have a chance to see what Trey Lance is made of, assuming things go right for him. And man, do I just have all fingers and toes crossed that everything falls in line for Trey Lance and presents him with the opportunity to seize his goal, right? Whether he does or not, that's up to him. But I just hope that there's nothing that stands in his way, like some small injury that he faced his first year that really offset the finger injury. A lot of things have not gone his way. It feels like it's about time that Trey gets some good luck.
I sure hope so. I mean, we got to see what he has. I mean, it's forever going to be a debate of, is he good? Is he not good? Is what would have happened? What is this if he doesn't play? And
absolutely,
I'm not wishing a hard rehab on Purdy or a stiff training camp to Darnold. I'm just intrigued about what Trey Lance can actually do, and hopefully he gets that chance.
I agree. Nothing would make me happier than to see Trey Lance succeed this offseason. Regardless of who ends up starting the vast majority of the games, I want to see success for every player that is on the Niners, in particular those that go through adversity like Trey Lance has in his first 3 seasons. All right, so we are in agreement there, a little bit of lockstep around the fact that, 5 is fair. We may want number 1, but 5 is fair. Now we are on to a PFF grade here, and this is in regard to our draft. PFF, not impressed. Not impressed with the 49ers draft. A C-, below average. Randon, these are the kind of grades I used to get back in high school. Unacceptable grades that are not going to further you into, the upper echelons of life. Is that the case with this draft class? Is that a harsh grade that PFF has laid out there? Or do you find yourself being a little bit harsh on the Niners coming out of the 2023 draft?
And just like you succeeded based on your grades, so will the Niners. Like, I do agree that the PFF is right in lockstep with this one. I was not impressed with their draft. There's a couple gems, which we'll talk about, but overall, you know me, big value guy, take best player available. I don't think they did that. And I don't think they drafted for need. I think they just drafted out of left field. I really don't. There's a lot of picks that don't make sense to me in this draft. And hey, I'll be the first one to admit, I don't watch tape. I'm not a professional scout. I read a lot about scouting, and I read a lot about different people's opinions who do watch a lot of tape.
Right.
And it just didn't seem like a lot of these picks were even on par with anybody, let alone one person or somebody I listen to frequently. So it just didn't make sense to me. And, but hey, like you and I talked about off camera, the Seahawks got an F grade for the grade that they had with Wagner and Russell Wilson, right? And that worked out pretty good for them. So
it did.
I think that it only time will tell, and there's a lot of things that go, with time. But as of right now, I'm not excited about any of these picks. I'm not like, hey, let's pound the table for anybody here. But
there's no one. Wait, I want to dig in on that comment. There's nobody in this draft class where you're like, damn, that was a solid freaking pick. All of them, you're like, eh.
Like I see the pathway, but I'm just like, I'm not like excited. I'm not like waiting for training camp footage or anything like that. Like I'm not that person right now. No.
That's interesting. I have several that fall into that category for me. I'm with you 1,000% though, right? Like Randall Riley calls out here in the chat. Let's see what they're graded 3 years down the road. Those are the only grades that matter when it comes to draft classes, is the ones that are given in hindsight, when you actually know how this player was able to operate within the scheme fit, whether they matured as an individual, did they drop off, did they begin to get into legal trouble? Like there's any number of directions that this can go. And the only way to appropriately grade these is based off of hindsight. Once you know whether they're performing or not. If you're grading the drafts immediately following the draft, you're really just grading how they selected versus how you had every person graded yourself. And so it really just becomes a disagreement on talent evaluation. PFF has done their own talent evaluation, but you know what? I'm going to trust the Niners talent evaluators over PFF, because if the PFF guys were all that good, they'd be working in the NFL and not around it. I look at
but the Niners are less than 50% successful too. So like nobody's 100%.
A lot of misses in the draft. Yeah, totally. It is a crapshoot, no doubt about it. But I came out of it with some players in there that I was really excited about. I agree with you when you said the Niners did not take best player available. I think that's true. I thought they targeted a couple of guys, and I don't fundamentally have an issue with that. I think if you have someone that you believe is a good character guy, good scheme fit, a high caliber individual, trading up and getting them is an appropriate way to go about doing business. And that felt like, the first pick there. And then setting the kicker market, right? I'm jumping ahead here. I'm getting into overall draft thoughts here. So I'm going to transition the topic. But really, to me, it wasn't best player available. They did set the market a little bit. They were aggressive. And it was that aggression that I was actually happy about. To tie a bow on that last topic, I have them more in that B- range as opposed to the C- range, because I did have a few players there that I was excited about. So let's talk about some of those players. Let's go through the top three and talk about those individually. So the first one, I'll start that off because I had just made those comments. But Ji'Ayir Brown, to me, a phenomenal talent, top in the safety pool. The Niners got ahead of the need. They need a safety next year. So they did the same thing they did a year prior with Talanoa Hufanga in getting him and bringing him in, allowing him to learn behind Jaquiski Tartt, but finding meaningful snaps for him. And I anticipate the same for Ji'Ayir Brown. I love his personality. I love what I see on tape. Seems like the only knock against him is speed. But when I watch him on tape, it feels like he plays faster than his 40 time would indicate. That was a pick I was really excited about because it was like, hey, this is our guy. We don't think he's going to be here at 99. Most scouts seem to agree about that, and they went and got him. How'd you feel about pick 87, Ji'Ayir Brown?
Now, this pick, I guess I am a little excited about just because of the fact that they did go up and get somebody.
They
I'm not
did.
like,
And you said that before the draft, right?
yeah, I said like, hey, if they feel like there's a need, not a need, or if there's a feel like there's a player they need to go get, I have no problem with the team putting their reputation on the line and going up and get somebody. It's easy to sit back and draft whoever's there, but to go up and say, hey, this is our guy, that takes some balls. And for them to do that for Ji'Ayir Tig, which he goes by at Penn State Brown, at pick 87, that's a big deal. What I do really like about him, he's a ball hawk. He led all of the NCAA in the last 2 years in interceptions for safeties. Even though he had a slow 40 time, which was a 4.65, he does play faster on tape, according to a lot of scouts. Maybe his GPS was faster. They did say about that about Hufanga last year that his GPS time in his pads were better than his 40 time. There was a lot of scouts that said this was the best pure safety in the draft. When you have a team in college, sometimes you take your best safety and you drop him down and play corner. Majority of his snaps were at safety. So I really like that they weren't trying to like make him do everything in college. They let him play safety. They let him mature at safety. The Niners seem like they want him at safety. So I really like that. I do like that the fact that his energy and his leadership skills matches with what the culture is in San Francisco. Hardworking guy, never takes a play off, first one on the field, last one off, all those good cliches, but they're cliches for a reason because that's what San Francisco has built their team around. So I do like a lot of these guys here. I just don't think for me to get excited about a guy that it needs to be like a generational player, or it needs to be a guy that I can see starting right away. I don't think he starts over Gibson. I think that it'll be
I don't think so
year shake either. So for me, it's like a slow burn, I'm putting him in the crock pot. I'm throwing some seasoning in there, and hopefully I get a good meal out of it. But right now, it's not like, ordering some pizza and getting the gratification right away.
That's right.
It's something I have to wait for.
But some of those stews, man, you let them simmer for a day, Randon, and they just get better. They just get better. And that's what we may see here. I agree. I think Wilkes will find a way to get him on the field, much in the way that Hufanga was on the field in his rookie year and played some meaningful snaps. And you could see some 3 safety sets. Certainly we'll get some special teams reps on there. But you're right. I mean, he's probably a starter in the future and not this year, barring injury. And so that's your top pick in the draft. That's the pick that you traded away 2 additional picks to go up and get. You really do have to hope that he is able to contribute and that Tayshaun Gibson doesn't have that big drop off in this one, that you have added depth and not missed out on another player that could have stepped in and provided more snaps for the 49ers, filled in at a need where they didn't have a starting caliber player. I will say I'm in agreement with Matt Maiocco in the idea that one of the biggest outcomes of this draft was someone who was not drafted, right? A position that was not addressed. This feels like a time to bring it up. And that is tackle, right? The 49ers did not go out and get any offensive linemen in the draft. And to me, that did say a lot about how they feel about their candidates in-house. I think it speaks to how they feel about the gentleman stepping in at right tackle. God, how am I blanking on his freaking name at the moment? McKivitz, Colton McKivitz. Come on, Schuh. Yes, Colton McKivitz. That to me, it was a huge vote of confidence in that. And it was a position that honestly I started to question myself before the draft. Hey, is this year's Talanoa Hufanga, where the Niners believe they have that position locked down? This year's Aaron Banks, where, hey, we all said you needed a left guard last year. Turned out Aaron Banks was good. I'm interested to see if Colton McKivitz ends up being that guy this time around.
Yeah, they hit on it last year with Hufanga, but it's not going to be a guaranteed hit this year. Maybe McKivitz is a travesty. And my draft crusher was right there for all 3 of these picks. And maybe that's why I'm a little salty. When your crush ends up with somebody else, you get a little salty. So
yes, you do.
Yeah, maybe I'm right there because I think he went at pick 104 to the Colts. And, Colts had a good draft. They went with all athleticism, I thought. But, he was right there. You could have picked him. Mainly, I get it. Okay, you went out and got a safety. Safety was a need. It was one of my top 5 needs for the team.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're getting to the next 2 picks, which I thought were horrible. But,
Talk to me about kicker, my man. Talk to me about kicker. This was a topic for you before the draft.
The worst decision I've ever seen a franchise make, ever. I'm all about value, right?
Right.
Like, okay, it's all about value, and I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, I don't care what anybody says. They're like, oh, well, the Patriots took, a fourth-round kicker. Well, so what? So what? Like, realistically, like, did they take a fourth-round kicker because of the fact that we took a kicker in the third and they reacted based on what we did?
Potentially.
Or is it because they were wrong and we're both wrong about drafting kicker? You want to know a funny stat here? It's not really funny at all, because only 1 out of 17 kickers actually drafted in the NFL draft have signed a second contract with the team that they've been drafted by. Oof. That's not very good odds.
Oof. Is that the last 17 kickers that were drafted?
Yeah,
only one?
Now, I know Money Moody is supposed to be
odds.
generational, but it's bad odds.
That's like 6.5% right there.
It's not great, whatever percentage that is.
It ain't great.
So, like, that's my thought there. It's like, I get it. I get it. Like, that it's a glaring need on the team. But if you really look at it, like, he only kicked 2% better than Zane Gonzalez in college, and 2% better than Zane Gonzalez in the pros, which is a higher level of kicking. Right. 2% is 2 kicks out of 100. Is that worth a third-round pick? Is that worth a guy like Blake Freeland, who could have started for our team at right tackle, and then maybe you get Moody, you move up into the 4th round and get him, or take him with the next pick? Because the tight end wasn't generational that we got. No offense to Cameron Letu. You don't do anything that's impressed me. Like, he was the 12th ranked tight end in the draft. He's not overly athletic. He's not overly productive in college. Like, I just don't get any of this little, like, 2nd and 3rd round pick in the mashup. Like, going into the 3rd round, when they took their last pick and moved up to 87, I was like, oh, cool. They kept their 99 and 101. They moved up. They're going for a guy. There's still plenty of room. Well, it's like, I get it. I get it. Like, I see the vision. And then the vision just took a hand grenade to the teeth, because it was like, I don't know what is going on here.
A hand grenade to the teeth. That is a bad outcome and a good visual there. I am not on your side there, but not quite where Bryant Culp is either. I find myself in the middle of those two opinions. I've got to disagree with both. Bryant Culp coming in, sneakerhead here on the channel. Great dude. We have been in a round table with Bryant over on Jack's channel. Says Moody was the best pick in the draft. So obviously 2 very different opinions, Randon. You just went through solid logic as to why you believe that was a poor pick, poor value in your opinion. Obviously, Bryant is a fan of that one. Randall Riley saying, hey, well, Moody better be good. I'm ordering my jersey as we speak. I'm all on board with the Moody jerseys. To me, this was, you set the market, you fill the position of need, and you potentially got a generational talent. It does change my opinion that going into the draft, it was my belief that Moody was the best kicker on the board. I know that you didn't share that belief, so it makes it almost exponentially worse that the Niners set the market for kickers and didn't even take the guy that you had at number 1. Whereas for me, they took the best player available. I do see the Patriots coming in 13 spots later to draft the second kicker as evidence of appropriate value. And the reason that I say that is, I think for me, you have to go into the draft. If you're in your draft room, if you and I are in the 49ers draft room making decisions, you sort of have to assume going in that other teams have the same evaluation as you do. You can't hope that, hey, I'm going to wait and take my guy because hopefully the Patriots misevaluated talent and they have a different kicker above ours. I think you have to go in with the logic of, hey, our number 1 guy is Jake Moody. Anyone else who has a kicker need, that's their number 1 guy as well. So if we want to be assured of getting our own guy, we've got to jump ahead. We've got to set the market. So I like the aggression of that move. I'd rather it wasn't an aggressive move to get a kicker, but kicker was a big need coming in. So I saw this one as a reasonable pick, not one that excited me, but a player I wanted to draft and appropriate value in my humble opinion. And so for me, this one turned out to be a good pick, not one that I got excited about, not one that I wrote home about, but one that I think adds to the value for the 49ers and gives them a cost-controlled option going forward at kicker.
I mean,
Now,
Wishnowsky, they drafted in the 4th, and there's been plenty of undrafted guys drafted after him that have been producing more than he has.
I do think that's evidence towards your point, is that the miss rate on kickers. Now, finally, last year, Wishnowsky has himself a Pro Bowl year, but it's hard to justify his entire career up until now versus the draft stock, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, if you were able to get a 86% kicker, Zane Gonzalez, off the street, I mean, granted he had an injury, right, like you are able to find and patch holes there. Like Justin Tucker, I think he was undrafted, right? Like, so like you look at all these different kickers that have been drafted in 5th round or later. If it were me, I would think that there was zero chance that the Patriots would have taken Moody in the 4th. They only took him because we took a kicker and they had a bunch of picks, right? Like it was almost like a game of chicken. And who knows what Belichick's thinking. But for me, I get what the Niners are saying. Hey, we have the best roster in football. Let's just go get our guy. Fuck the picks. Who cares? Let's just take the player. Understandable. But I'm always about value in building a team. And like you could have assessed both the tackle position and the kicker position later in the draft, and I would have been fine.
I do think it's fair to question the value of the pick. I like the aggression of it because they set the market, because they said to themselves, no, this is the top fucking kicker. We're going to get the top kicker. I'm much more pleased getting the top kicker at 99 than getting the second kicker taken in the draft. Even if it was the top kicker on the Niners board 13 picks later, I would feel worse if I were the Patriots as far as value goes. Now, speaking of value, the next pick did not seem like phenomenal value for the 49ers if you read most of the draft guides out there. Cameron Latou, the tight end out of Alabama, picked at 101. There were various ranges, but certainly some that had him going as late as the 5th round. To me, this one screamed of a run on tight ends and the 49ers getting a little bit jumpy and feeling like they had to get ahead of missing out on everybody. And to me, being a fantasy football drafter, someone who's done a crap load of fantasy football drafts, I always regret chasing a position instead of taking those guys who are then tumbling down the board and are higher value. So this one, to me, immediately following the draft, was one of the picks I was very lukewarm on. I was not thrilled with value here. What were your thoughts on pick 101?
Not great, Al. Not great. I think Cameron, hope he's a fine individual, but like I said, 12th ranked tight end. There was Freeland. There was, for an edge position, there was McGuire out of Missouri on the board. Both went in the early 4th round. That you could have taken a player that could have made an immediate impact for the team, which I don't think Latou will. I think he's a backup tight end. I think they brought in Dwelly for a reason as well. He seems like a Dwelly light. Like he's not overly impressive with his hands. He doesn't have really much of a blocking skill set. Now, there's a lot that could be worked on, right? He was a defensive player. A lot of people, I think he was a 4-star out of high school defensive recruit, was transferred through multiple positions on the defensive side of the football to offensive side. Now, was that because of his lack of physicality? Was it because of lack of position value where he was behind the totem pole, too many players to make an impact, so they moved him to tight end? There is some positives, right? A lot of people think that he can, with his semi-athleticism, that he can break away on stem routes. So if you want to light him up off the being the off tight end, and in the slot, he can break up the middle and use his size and stuff like that. What makes no sense to me is if that's what you plan on using him as, which is, it seems to be his best skill set, why not get a blocking tight end and allow Kittle to do that? Why not free Kittle up, who is an all-pro, to catch the football rather than drafting a guy that you maybe pegged to be a move tight end? Now, I don't know if they can get physicality out of him. I don't know if they can, coach that up. I just think there's a lot of what ifs, and a 3rd-round pick isn't going to be perfect, but I feel like this guy was more in the 7th, 6th round range by all accounts. And from the small tape that I did watch, I actually watched a little tape after the draft because I was like, who the heck is this guy? Right. I wasn't impressed. Yeah.
Well, I will say that coming out of the draft, much like you're describing your reaction, I felt the same way. And I got to put this up and say it because I'm a big fan of rhyming. Randall Riley saying, so you think Latu was a snafu? Yes, I did after the draft. I will say, as of today, as of this afternoon, my mind is slightly tweaked, slightly changed because of an article that came out by Matt Barrows in The Athletic that is a standard piece now that he does on an annual basis, wherein he takes the relationship he has with Scott McCloughan, the old 49ers talent evaluator who left the organization, had a lot of personal issues, I think I don't mean to, throw something on a guy, but I think has dealt with alcoholism in his life, like is a dude who's a troubled individual, but a phenomenal talent evaluator, was responsible for a lot of the talent that we had on those Harbaugh teams. And he actually came out and said this was one of my favorite picks in the 49ers draft, that he had Cameron Latu with a second round grade on him. His quote was, "I've been scouting him for 3 years." He said, "I saw him in the spring game as a sophomore, and I never lost sight of him from that point on." So I get positive, good feelings from that. He says he competes. He's just not there yet. And that's when I start to back up and say, oh, okay, a lot of the words that you mentioned there are in there. Potential, like untapped, like, oh, maybe we can get more. And so, hey, it's a late third round pick. I agree. I would rather have had a polished player. I'm thrilled that there seems to be some upside, and it's one of those wait and sees for me. I'm not convinced. I haven't seen enough myself to definitively say I like what I see on tape. When I turned on the tape of Ji'Ayir, that to me was an instantaneous, yep, I am on board. When I'm looking at Cameron Latu, I'm not seeing that. And I acknowledge that Scott McCloughan is a hell of a talent evaluator. So his sign off makes me feel a little bit better.
I think the one thing I can say positive about this pick is that tight end was one of my needs for this draft, and they threw 2 darts at that position.
They did.
Ross Dwelley isn't the answer. He's had all the opportunity in the world to be the answer. And so they threw a couple darts, and hopefully one of those darts can hit. At least if you can get a 4-year participating player out of Latu, even though he's not a starter, he's a backup. You get him, 200 yards and a touchdown or 2 touchdowns a year as a backup tight end. It'll be a successful pick for where they picked him at. But I'm not enthralled yet. And like I said, all these picks, I'm putting some sugar in my coffee and just sipping on it and waiting and seeing, right? Like that's what
sugar in my coffee.
That's what I'm doing.
I'm here for it. Great one, 765 says, Rob, every player that every team has taken is going to have some type of hype. An article on why that player was a good pick. Doesn't mean the pick should have been made, though. 100% agree about that. Great one, 765. There will be a hype piece on every candidate out there. It's the nature of the draft. You'll have good takes, bad takes, positive impressions, negative impressions. But to me, Scott McCloughan is not with the rest of the riffraff. It is not like an article that's coming out from PFF. It is not like an article that's coming out from one of our less experienced beat reporters for the 49ers. This is a pro-level talent evaluator who got a lot of picks right, and that's why it sways me more than any other of the articles out there. But I agree with Randon. I think it's time to put that sugar in your coffee and just wait. I tend to go black on my coffee. Random story here for you, Randon. This is completely off topic and probably no one cares. But as a child growing up, for some reason, I thought my dad drank coffee black. So I taught myself. I was like, well, if my dad does it, I got to do it that way too. He's a real man. I got to be a real man. So I can drink my coffee black. And then when I was like 22, I was like, Dad, I love my black coffee just like you. He's like, what are you talking about? I don't drink black coffee. So my entire life has been a lie, Randon. All of it. No. All right.
Throw up
some of
Darren
the later picks.
Please, if you could.
What's that?
Throw on Darren Worthington's copy about Kittle was not all that when being drafted.
Kittle was not all that when he was drafted, Darren says.
So yeah, he didn't have a first round grade, mainly because he didn't play much of tight end. He has a tight end fullback hybrid out of college, but he ran the best 3-cone. He ran the best short shuttle. He was very athletic in the combine, which there was a lot of traits which show that he could be a supreme athletic tight end. I just don't see that with Latu. As I'm saying, there's not a trait that I hold on to with his game that I'm like, okay, yeah, like if he can exploit that, he could be a successful NFL player. And like I said, I'm not a scout. I don't do this for a living. I'm wearing a Kramer t-shirt, for God's sakes. Like I just, that's just my opinion from the short things I've watched. So.
I'm wearing a Kramer shirt, for fuck's sake. Yes. And I think that's what worries me about the article. If I'm honest, even though I'm putting stock in Scott McLuhan's opinion on this, it's what worries me about the article is he doesn't reference a specific trait either. Right. It is words like potential. It is, untapped. And sure, I have faith in the 49ers coaching staff. And those kind of terms are ones that you watch out for in the draft. Typically, those are ones associated with later picks, not the third round, even though we're talking about the end of the third round. So talking about later picks, what were some of your favorite late picks in this one?
Now, I do like some of these late picks. Obviously, they're dart throws. They're always going to be dart throws. I thought linebacker was one of the best needs for this team. D. Winters, I'm in Texas, right down the street from TCU. So I saw a lot of their games. This guy's a dog. Like, he's just always around the football, sniffing out where the play should be. I really like what he's done at that program. He's a little shorter. He's undersized, has short arms. So, he's not really that prototypical linebacker or athletic guy, but he's just always around the football. And it just reminds me of a guy like Dre Greenlaw, who, hey, wasn't really there with the physical attributes, but always around the football, very violent, very aggressive, always pursuing. And I just really like his game in that aspect, just watching TCU play quite a bit this last year. Captain of his team, so very respected in the locker room, which the Niners like. So I really like that pick. Comes with some acumen, and it doesn't seem like a guy who's going to have a problem playing special teams, who's going to have a problem earning the roster. So, I really like that pick. I think that was the right value and the right round for him to go. And he could literally be our linebacker 3 going into his first season, with a good camp. So I really think that was a good pick and a good, toss in the pool, as they say. And then the other one right here that I have that I really like is Robert Beal Jr. So
yes,
this is a guy who 5-star recruit out of high school, one of the best defensive prospects out of high school, ran a 4.48 40, had more explosive traits like the broad jump than Nick Bosa, and just never really produced. Didn't really transfer out of the college that he went to. You usually see if they're not really producing right away, they transfer so they can get opportunity. He stayed there, which is something to be said about that. Like, he tried to work his way through whatever he needed to work through. Obviously, Georgia was a powerhouse, national championship, multiple defensive first rounders. So he didn't have that opportunity, but freakish athlete. The number one thing that I really like about him is what Kosturek said when he was drafted. Like, I want to see you put your hand in the dirt and be violent. I like the violence that you play with. The team needs that. The team needs a little guy that's going to get in your face and talk crap and do all that kind of stuff and expect, to break a few bones, break some, shoulder pads or whatever. Like, if he can untap that, if Kosturek thinks he can untap that, then I think he can untap that because his track record says so. So
absolutely right. He has a talent for spotting it. He has a talent for coaxing it out of folks. And I love the story that came out in this draft cycle of GTFO as related to Robert Beal Jr., the get the fuck off speed. And that's what they measured, is the ability at the snap, the movement within the first 2 yards there at the line of scrimmage. And Robert Beal's get the fuck off speed was off of the charts. It was number 1 in the draft, as was, his speed, his 10-yard split. This feels like someone who is buried on the depth chart at Georgia, but has the physical skill set that if he becomes a hit, like if the Niners' 5th round magic continues here, and they're right about Robert Beal Jr., that they have a younger, lesser version of D Ford on a rookie contract in the 5th round. And I'm not saying that I'm putting him on the same level by any means, but I just mean in the same mold, right? A speed edge. And we know that 2019 defense was the one that was best unlocked by having Bosa on one side and a speed edge rusher on the other, Obviously, D Ford was a premier pass rusher when healthy. Robert Beal Jr. has a long ways to go there, but I loved both of those picks, both of them fast. And that was a trend. Character and speed seemed to be trends later in the draft, and certainly selecting players that felt like they would fit well on the practice squad. And when you look at a deep roster like the 49ers have, and you're looking at the tail end of a draft, you have to look at ways in which guys can make the team and contribute. And a lot of those guys are going to be contributing on the special teams. Absolutely. Randall Riley coming in here, Sneakerhead on the channel, says D Winters, Luter, and Beal Jr. Wait for Wilkes to get a hold of these young pups. I'm very excited about it. Yes, Beal was the first draft pick to sign. He is officially on the team. Alden Beal Jr. Man, if only. If only. I gotta say, I was the of the late round picks. Braden Willis. I liked him as value pick, as taking a second bite at the apple at tight end. Ronnie Bell seems like a high character guy. He can high point the ball. Doesn't have the physical skill set. I'll be surprised if he makes the roster. But he seems like a great practice squad guy to have. Jalen Graham, the linebacker at pick 255. Was another one that I thought was a ho-hum pick, other than the fact that he came out of Purdue, where Keena Turner also hailed from, the 49ers' first draft pick out of Purdue back in the day. I wasn't terribly excited. And then that same article, Scott McLuhan was even more excited about Jalen Graham, talking about having a 4th round grade on him 2 years in a row. Said nobody else liked him. I kept saying, what do you mean? He's out there making plays. And they go on later to talk about how, yes, indeed, Winters has drawn those comparisons to Dre Greenlaw, as you mentioned, Randon, and that McLuhan sees a similarity to Azeez Al-Shire with Graham. And hell, if you land a contributing player towards the tail end of the 7th round 2 years in a row, that's a freaking get, man.
Yeah, I mean, again, all these guys are coffee picks, right? We're just going to sit and wait and see what's going on, and if they can contribute towards the end of the season, then great. This team, as been shown based on our record, is not built for September through October. They're built for November, December, and January. Right.
There will be attrition. People will go down to injury. We will need some of these guys to step up.
Exactly. Drake Greenlaw was the healthiest season last year. CMC was one of his healthiest seasons last year, et cetera. So, some of these guys might have to come in. I just I don't expect Bill to be anything this year. I really don't. I really just like that.
It seems like a developmental player.
Untapped potential. But the fact that they have Jackson, Cleveland Farrell, and Beal all able to take bites of the apple and see who can come out of top by the end of the season, I like that. I like that there's competition going forward, because there is going to be attrition. Obviously photos are out. I don't know if Jackson's in better shape. He's wearing a long sleeve t-shirt and
it's tough to
t-shirt
tell.
Over that. It's tough to tell, and
he looks bulked up, but it's hard to see definition or anything.
And you know what? I was listening to this clip from a podcast, and I forget what podcast it was. It was about basketball. And this ex-NBA player was asked, what percentage of people playing basketball actually still love basketball? And he said, maybe 50%, maybe. And it's got to be the same for the NFL. Which one of these late round picks are going to still love the game enough to put the preparation in it? And he said it. You can contribute it to a date, right? Are you calling the restaurant ahead of time to make sure there's a reservation? Are you buying flowers? Are you making sure you smell good? Are you trimming your beard? Are you making sure your shoes have no scuffs in them? Are you doing all these things that for the first date because you're excited about it? You're excited. You're picking her up for the first time. You excited about it? You doing all these stuff to prep the date before the date happens, or are you just showing up, right? And a lot of these guys are showing up. And he said most of those people are guys that are overly skilled and they've never had attrition in the sport. And so it really just depends on their love for the game. But he said less than 50%. And that's what it's going to take for a lot of these guys, right? Like the Jackson, right? Drake Jackson's never had attrition in his lifetime in the game of football, right? And so now that the Niners are demanding more from him and showing him that he needs to rise to the occasion, will he? That's all up here. That has nothing to do with his physical ability, and the same thing with Brandon Ayuk. And so all these prospects here, have to show up and prep for their date, prep for camp, get ready, get their body in shape, because Drake Jackson had all offseason. Aaron Banks answered the bell.
Yes, he did. Emphatically, he answered that
Shanahan
bell.
Literally told him to his face, you were not good enough to play this on this team. That's why you sat all season. And he answered the bell. So did Drake Jackson, are these prospects going to do so? And we'll see. We'll see how that works out. I think it's interesting that how much the mind plays into this game.
Yes, I am 100% on board with that. The 6 Ps, Randon: proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. That is absolutely essential, whether it's a date or the NFL. And I agree. To me, that's why some of these later round guys felt like wins for the 49ers, because there seemed to be no doubt in a Braden Willis or a Ronnie Bell or a Jalen Graham that the love of the game for those guys seems to be there. Like high character guys that feel like they have the drive, may not have the physical skill sets, and therefore fell a little bit later. But to your point, oftentimes it is the mental aspect of the game that ends up mattering more in the long term. And part of the reason why, a lot of these guys who have that mental side of it, you stash them on the practice squad, give them a year in an NFL weight room, and now all of a sudden you've combined the physical with what you needed on the mental side of it, and you get some of these guys that will probably step up and make this roster this year, like a McCrary Ball or a Dante Poe. There are options out there, guys who manage to extend their opportunity to make an NFL squad. A couple comments here that I want to touch on, because the Niners did renegotiate or restructure Christian McCaffrey's contract over the draft weekend, freeing up a considerable amount of cash. Now, I've heard like Matt Maiocco, a very astute 49ers beat writer, say, well, that's just operating capital. But there is an individual on Twitter who does the best breakdowns. I believe it's Jason Hurley, does the best breakdowns of the actual 49ers cap. And he definitively stated that, hey, the only salaries from this draft class that are going to offset the top salaries on the 51 man or on the top 51 salaries are the third round picks. And so the Niners do not need $10 million to sign their draft picks as they normally would. It's a much lower figure. It seems to hint to me that they could get somebody. So Great 1765 brings in, we should sign Floyd and Clark for more depth on the edge. Darren Worthington going a different route, different name. What do you fellas think about signing Yannick Ngakoue? So between those three or any of the other edges out there, do you see the Niners making a move specifically at edge, but do you think that renegotiation was done with intent? Are they going to sign a veteran, whether edge or not?
I think the team is very well prepped in edge. Now, my thought is, hey, we got to win. So, like, bring all the best talent in available.
Mm-hmm.
This really puts down Beal to the fourth edge rusher. You're cutting guys like, Bryant, which I really don't care about, or Kerry Hyder or whoever. That's fine.
Guys like that, you're probably going to be able to re-sign if you need to, right?
Yeah. But for me, it's like, yeah, you're trying to win now. You're trying to go for it. The NFL isn't a developmental league, so the teams like the Niners don't really have that chance to develop people. Unless it's your quarterback of the future, which you should develop those guys. But like Drake Jackson, if he's going to get stuck behind the 8 ball because of Ngakoue and Cleveland Farrell and whoever, like he's only got himself to blame. Like he has all the opportunity. He's going to be given the opportunity to bring it in. I think it's probably operating capital to where I don't know if you can restructure a contract midseason. I'm not a cap guy, but maybe they're thinking like, hey, if this team has a need midseason, we're going to need cap. Like, let's just restructure it now and like have that availability.
Yeah, get ahead of it.
And so maybe that's more the need. I understand that people want Ngakoue. I get it. He had a great season, 8.5 sacks. He probably would have a better season with us. But the team's invested quite a bit. 2nd round pick. Former 1st round pick. You have a 5th round pick in Beal. Like you have guys that have been there. Kerry Hyder, they re-signed back. They went out and got Bryant. Like Bryant wasn't a late sign. Like he was signed in like mid-March, right? So like they went out and targeted guys that they feel like could contribute. Now, will all these guys make the roster? No, I don't think they're keeping 15 defensive linemen. But I think that they're making preparations. Now, will Ngakoue get to so much of a value where it's a no-brainer? Like, yeah, I'll come play for $3 million. Like, yeah, then you have to take that risk. Like, it's all about value for me, right? But I don't think they made just enough cap room. Oh, there's 8.5 or 8.75 or whatever the number is, just so they can sign, Yannick. Like, I don't think that that's the reason. Yeah.
I'm going the other way on this one from historic observation, feeling like the Niners typically in a situation like this have operated with less cap space until it's needed. And so to me, it's a signal of something. And I've thought that it should be an edge player. So I'm sort of combining the sign of, hey, this additional cap was freed up. Usually the Niners, in my observation, have done that with purpose. So they're probably signing someone. To me, the most obvious there feels like edge. Obviously, if they could make some sort of a trade or acquisition at right tackle, that also could be a position they look to upgrade.
What if it's for Bosa? What if it's for Bosa's extension? Because if your signing bonus gets allocated throughout all the years of your current contract and your future contract.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if his signing bonus, what if it's a 5-year, $165 million deal? With $30 million signing bonus. Okay, that's an extra $5 million per year, right? Yeah. So like that's where the money's going to go. What if it's for Nick Bosa's signing bonuses? That's why they're making room.
It totally could. I just think that they've been eyeing next offseason for getting Bosa done. So we shall. It certainly could be. Oftentimes the Niners have backloaded those contracts such that the first year is inexpensive and therefore wouldn't need additional cap. But that could be another reason. Certainly that would check the box of why they did it, why they freed up that cap space.
Well, even if they backloaded it, it wouldn't his new contract wouldn't take effect for 3 years from now. But the signing bonus gets doled out between all the current years and future years of his contract.
Yes, it definitely gets amortized over the entirety of it. And they even have now gotten into this point of adding these void years, which is what they did to McCaffrey's deal to spread out that initial cap hit even further. Absolutely.
The NFL's thinking like there's going to be $380 million in cap space in 5 years. Like it just
and there
feels
is.
That way.
That's what's fucking crazy is there is going to be that kind of cap space. They are right about their projections. This freaking sport has taken over the world. All right, let's talk
Germany
about
this year.
Germany, man.
We were talking about going to London
for the international game so badly, Randon. I know. I would love it. Can love it.
I know we were talking about the Jacksonville game. When I saw that on the schedule, that's like the first thing I thought about. Oh, is that going to be in London?
Yeah.
Like, is that going to be in London? Because that would be sweet. But there's going to be some games.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
God. Okay, well, let's talk about some undrafted free agents. We got How About Them Niners coming in the chat, bringing it up, but that is our next topic anyways. Most exciting undrafted free agents, those listed here in the chat. How About Them Niners says, I'm excited to see our undrafted free agents, Coletto, Fisher, Winstead, and LeBourne. Who are you most intrigued to see, Randon?
So this is another thing here. It's like we thought of all these undrafted guys might make some way on the roster. Jordan Mason had a sniff in the NFL, and that was pretty much it. There really wasn't much run anywhere else. I really liked Poe and the center from Arizona. I already forget his name. But so it's like, man, you want to be excited about these guys about, hey, they're going to make the roster. They're going to be good. But chances are these guys aren't going to be anything. But
right,
that's not the type of podcast we run. We want some optimism here. So I'm going to go with Jack Coletto, the fullback, linebacker, quarterback for Oregon State. He had over 22 touchdowns in his 5 years there, mainly as a fullback. He's got a nose for the end zone. And I look at a player like Taysom Hill in New Orleans, right? Guy can throw a little bit. He can catch a little bit. He can run a little bit. He's not afraid to get hit. He's obviously played on the defensive side of the football. So, you know, he's just an organism. And Kyle Shanahan seems to like those guys and could do something. I do think that Juice is vastly overpaid for his position value. So, you know, maybe in the future, they're looking to go for a guy that's a little cheaper. Is that Coletto? Is that somebody else they bring in? I don't know. But this guy can do a little bit of everything. And he's not afraid to be anywhere on the field. He just, as long as his team wins.
It's unbelievable. He's just, I mean, he's one of those guys that people talk about as a football player, right? He's the jack of all trades. He's here in Oregon, so I'm a fan. I love this call out by you. Played running back, quarterback, linebacker for the Beavers. Was there over 5 seasons, played in 43 games. I think that the critique of why he isn't a pound for pound juice replacement is the lack of speed, right? He's a little bit slower
and no catching ability.
Than juice. Yeah. So, I mean, I see your point of an overpay at fullback. To me, we've had this conversation before. I see the value in juice, even though you shouldn't be paying a fullback that much. I know that he is used in such a way that the value is increased. But I'm going to take a different route there, and I'm going Joey Fisher, the offensive tackle out of Shepherd University. Most people projecting him to move inside because of short arms. He's got the T-Rex syndromes. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Joey. Don't beat me up. The man did 40 reps in the bench press, 40 reps of 225. I watched the freaking video. I can tell you, that is impressive. The dude broke a freaking bone in his hand at the Collegiate Bowl, wasn't able to perform there, and then managed to put up 40 reps. 40 reps in the bench
it's because
press.
Those T-Rex arms. I have long arms. I can't bench anything.
Shorter distance to go up.
Yeah.
It's an advantage. I didn't even think of that. But he does, and he was quick too. Sub 5 second 40 time, 1.72 in the 10-yard split, both among the fastest at offensive line. But he's a Division II school prospect and took 2 years off in between years at college to be a locksmith with his dad. But that to me, again, you're talking about a guy who he's got sort of that football player mentality, a little similar to the Jack Coletto pick. He was signed with $130,000 guarantee, which certainly shows multiple teams were interested. But to your point, it was Donovan West last year who got all that fanfare, and I believe was given $100,000 guarantee on his contract. And it's not like we're talking about Donovan West a whole lot this offseason. So the $130,000 makes people cue in on this individual, but it doesn't necessarily go towards ensuring that he makes the team. Still very much seems like a practice squad guy. My guess, and a healthy guess, I'd be willing to lay some money on this for both players, is that Joey Fisher and Jack Coletto end up on the practice squad this year.
So Fisher was my second guy. I really like him. All-American. So even though he played Division II, standout. And, a guy, what it says that for me, that he went away from the game, came back in, was able to be an All-American. He's just naturally gifted. He's a mauler.
That's a fair point.
Like, he's just a mauler. Like, you look at some of the tape with Brad from the SF Niners, showed some of his tape, and he's just a mauler out there. Like, has that attitude, right? And as a locksmith does, he's trying to figure out these puzzles out there on the field, and he's doing a good job of it. So I really like this pick. I mean, I think he was 286 when I looked it up, or maybe 296. Get into that physical, the pro weight room, get up to 305, put him in guard. Is Burfict going out to tackle? We've been talking about that. Is that the plan there? Do they see him as a center because he moves well? More than any other position, the offensive line position, the 40 time means more than anything. Because of the fact that how can these big guys move? Are they athletic? Are they able to get into open field? Are they able to block? And especially with the zone blocking scheme, that's most important. So the sub 540 is great, great shuttle time and 10-yard split. So this guy is athletic. He's not afraid to maul people. He looks like he might be universal. Is this a future center conversion that they might be working on? Maybe that's something that you could be seeing with Brendel only being there a couple of years. He's well past 30. So, like a bright kid, like a locksmith's a bright guy. He's trying to figure out these problems. And maybe that's what he's doing. So I still think that, it's a coffee pick. A lot of these guys are coffee picks.
Yes.
But I do like a lot of the traits that he gave. And the fact that he was the cream of the crop in Division II, even though it was Division II, still means he's exceptional at what he does.
Absolutely. And you have to imagine that had he been able to play in the Collegiate Bowl and continued to show things, that he would have ended up being drafted. And therefore, this one feels like great value. So to me, that to me, when you're looking at undrafted free agents, hey, guys that can be buried on the practice squad. They have future potential. You want all the potential in the world with these undrafted free agents. Stash them on the practice squad and hope that they continue to mature. All right, let's pivot here away from the draft and talk about something that came out recently. Nick Bosa was talking to Yahoo Sports and made some comments about new defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. So Bosa comes out and says this: I don't think there's going to be much of a change. I think from Kyle down, there's kind of an understanding of how we do things with Chris Kocurek as our D-line coach. There's always ways to improve, but as a D lineman, I'm happy to say that I'll be doing pretty much very similar things to what I've done the last 4 years. He goes on to talk about his spin moves and doing them from both sides. We'll touch on that in just a moment. But my takeaway from this, there were a lot of articles written about how the defensive scheme won't change from DeMeco Ryans to Steve Wilks based on these comments. When I read this quote, I actually think he's specifically talking about the defensive line, and I still would anticipate, based on Steve Wilks' tenure as defensive coordinator, his track record, that we will see a higher percentage of blitzes from this 49ers defense, that we're probably going to get after the quarterback just a little bit more in creative ways with Steve Wilks, but not necessarily impact the defensive line, that what we see from Bosa and crew will be very much the same. What was your interpretation of the comments?
Yeah, well, as soon as he said the D line should stay the same, because of Kocurek, that's kind of what I thought. Wilks blitzes a little bit more. Will he continue that trend? I don't think it really matters. I think Bosa's all he's worried about is putting his hand in the dirt and getting to the quarterback, right? Like that's what Fred Warner and Hufanga and all those guys are for, and behind him is to worry about all those things. He's worried about stopping the quarterback every single time. That's what he's going to be getting paid to do now, and that's what he's going to be getting paid to do in the future. They're not going to have him out on coverage or dropping back or doing whatever. Right. Like
he's for rare occasions.
He's like, oh well, okay, Wilks is going to come in and agree to do what Kocurek needs him to do. Okay, great. So wide 9 is it? I can just go pin my ears back. Fantastic. You guys figure everything else out. I'm going to be an all-pro. So like that's kind of what. That's what I felt about the comments.
And honestly, his second comments very much echo that same sentiment of like, you let Bosa do what Bosa frickin' does. Like you don't get in the way of the man. And he goes on to say on switching sides of the ball, he says spin moves, swipes, certain power variations I use are better on each side, meaning that he does a spin move better on one side, a swipe on the other. And he says it's weird because it's just a coordination thing, left versus right. I'm ambidextrous, but I do feel a little more comfortable with certain things on each side from years and years of playing on each side and getting comfortable. I'm lucky because I kind of get to switch as I please, which is nice. That is Chris Kocurek and the 49ers defensive coaching staff saying, you are our stud. You get to do what you need to do. And I love that Bosa was like, the follow-up question from Yahoo Sports was, well, which side are you better at doing those things? He was like, I'm not going to tell you which side I'm better doing these things. All these offensive players watch a shitload of tape. They're going to watch that tape and they're going to find out for themselves where they think I'm better at a swipe move or a spin move. This to me just speaks of, this is a kind of player that is a generational talent. You do everything you can to retain him. You set him loose on offensives and you give him the freedom to do what it is he does best. And the fact that Chris Kocurek understands that, gets behind that, and just motivates the hell out of his players, to me, it just speaks to why we are continually so successful along that defensive line.
It's pretty crazy how he feels like he's successful on both sides, because you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, Taylor Lewan, right?
Right.
Pro Bowl tackle. He's saying like playing on the right side feels like Mars. Like he feels like he's not even playing football at that point. So like, it's just so crazy how one side can feel like home and one side can feel is completely different. And Nick Bosa is like, yeah, well, I got this move here. I got that move there. I'm, pretty much good there. It's like, it's almost like Chipper Jones for baseball, right? It's higher average on the left, more power on the right. Like he's good at different things. And he's just a freakishly good talent, generational talent at the defensive line position. And all props to him. Glad that they took that midget quarterback is what he said to that guy, right?
That's right. I love that line, man. We didn't even touch on that, but the way he talked trash to Arizona, I am here for that shit. Nick Bosa, you are my hero, sir. We had some more talks here. Lynch talking Purdy's timeline. He reiterated the 12-week timeline to start throwing. Here's the quote from the Murph and Mac show. Lynch says, first of all, he's here. He's working hard each and every day, and our staff has done a really nice job working with his surgeon and his physical therapy guy down in Arizona. So we had to get that all kind of coordinated so that Brock felt comfortable being up here, and we got that accomplished. So Brock's here working with his teammates. They're in phase 2. He's not out there throwing yet, he continues. That's going to happen around week 12, which is kind of the next inflection point, but he's doing really good, doing everything that he can do. As you know, that's just Brock's personality, and it's great to see him out there every day. I just got a report from the trainers, so week 12, that's where we can actually go out, start lobbing a football, and according to the surgeon, you start getting a little better read on exactly where he's at right about then. I think that's just kind of an indicator of where he is at. And then obviously you have to work up your strength, your stamina, you have to increase your reps, distance, all those things, but that's going to be well thought out, and he's doing well. I think you just take it day by day. It's cliche, but it's the best thing you can do. And he's done a great job of doing that. To me, this is good news, but a lot of a nothing burger, right? It is essentially saying, hey, there is going to be another inflection point. That inflection point comes at week 12 when we either say he can start throwing or the doctor says, oh shit, something doesn't look right. No, he can't start throwing. And all Lynch said in this was, hey, like we're coming up on that, like where we're at right now, things are progressing. But it is big news that he's there with his teammates, because that simple physical presence, that being there with the rest of the crew, to me, that does matter. So I'm going to take this as not much information, still the same timeline that we have been talking about before, but it is the next indicated step. It is the next positive check mark. And at that 12-week window, which would be about the first week of June, that'll be the next time we get either a positive check mark or some reason for concern.
Yeah, I mean, there's some positives to this, right? I mean, he's waving his hands at different games or the draft and being on
he can say hello now.
Yeah, where he's putting his hands down and putting pressure on it. Like to me, this is all, like I said, a bunch of nothing. Like until he's on the field doing what he's going to be paid to do as a football player, to me, it's a bunch of nothing. I'm glad he's progressing the way they should be. To me, it's like this is they're saying, oh, yeah, I'm in the best shape of my life. Like until I see it on the field and it comes to realization, like that's where I'm at. I do think that he did change the game of the NFL. If you watch the draft this year, how many late round quarterbacks were taken? Like they were all trying to find the Niners are
everybody was
trendsetters. The Niners are trendsetters, right?
Hey, next year there's going to be all sorts of kickers taken.
I know the next kicker is going to be taken in the second. You have all kinds of people trying to get the next Debo. You're watching the draft. Oh, this guy is like Debo light and he does Debo-esque things. And then now it's like, oh, well, hey, this guy has athletic skill sets like George Kittle in the late rounds. And then, you look at, all these quarterbacks are being taken. They're trying to find their Brock Purdy. Hey, I mean, if they're reaching for all these guys and they're trend setting, maybe the 3rd round kicker is the next Janikowski. I have no idea, but
right.
But I mean, I'm proud. I'm proud for Purdy. I mean, even if his NFL career is only those 8 games, I mean, he had a great storyline for the Niners, and I hope it's not that. I hope he gets more than just 8 games in the National Football League.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, Darren asked this. I wanted to get your opinion on it, but forgot back when the comment came up. But you just reminded me. Where do you think Purdy would have been drafted if the NFL had hindsight and there was a redraft? Purdy's a 1st-round pick, right?
No.
You think he's still
not everybody has what the Niners have in the skill positions.
Gotcha.
And
where would you see him drafted? 2nd, 3rd, somewhere in there?
Yeah, he still has no elite physical attributes besides his mentality and his pocket presence, and like those are all mental stuff, which you need to play the quarterback position.
You do.
But you look at all the 1st-round talent, and we're going to get to that guy in Sam Darnold. They all have elite physical attributes to go along with what you perceive as the mental game. So I think you probably would have been, if they saw those 8 games, you're probably a 2nd-round pick, early 2nd, kind of where Will Levis went. I think that's probably where you would see him at.
I think that's fair. I'm going to say late first round. I'm going to say somebody takes a flyer just because of how impressive that run was, to your point of like, regardless of what happens from here on out in Purdy's career, you can never take away from him that special run that occurred. I think someone would see that and be like, hey, I can plug that into my system. So I'm going to see that as a first round pick, but I don't think it's unfair to say a second or later. James Schaefer has joined the sneakerhead community. James, welcome. Always want to celebrate sneakerheads here on the channel. Always appreciate the support. Thank you, James. Thank you to all the sneakerheads. Randall Riley says, welcome to the greatest bearded show on the net, James. I am here for it. By the way, speaking of beards, we have an opportunity in the future. We're going to add in a roundtable. We're going to bring Jack Hammer onto this, and maybe we'll call it too many beards at that point. But we will definitely be bringing in additional beards, additional personalities to the program. Just wanted to put that on there. Stottle coming in here with the super chat. Much appreciated. Says, Rob, load up on vitamin C before you travel to a road game. LOL. This is in regards to, I have dealt with so many goddamn health things in this last year. It has been ridiculous. Like none of them, thankfully, anything significant to my knowledge. And yet I have been dealing with this stomach virus that I got freaking 3 weeks ago that, let me just say, I can't get into descriptions without too much information, and I don't want to do that to all of you. And so, yes, I will be loading up on my vitamins before any travels. The super chat is significantly appreciated for that. I will use that to purchase my vitamin C. Thank you so much. Okay, let us move on. One last person has been talking this week, and it's Matt Maiocco. And Matt Maiocco, I mean, he may be talking out of the side of his neck on this one. I wanted to see, I thought that I had a good Matt Maiocco reference here. I'll see if I can't get it when I turn it over to you, Randon. But here is what Matt Maiocco said in regard to Sam Darnold. He said this both on his podcast, the one that he does with Jennifer Lee Chan, and again today on KMBR, that Darnold may have the best arm the 49ers have ever had. Now, on his podcast, he references specifically 7-on-7s, throwing against air, no pass rush. But on KMBR, he was quoted as saying he might be, can I say this, the most talented thrower of the football that the 49ers have ever had. His clarification statement eases up a little bit. He says, let's just put him in the very high echelon of guys who can just drop back in the pocket and throw the football. I think that he hasn't really had any chance to succeed since his college days are over. I think he's had 4 head coaches in 5 years, 5 offensive coordinators in 5 years. He's a talented guy. So I will agree with Matt Maiocco on the last statement. He's a talented guy. Clearly, Sam Darnold has arm talent. No doubt about it. It's why he went 3rd overall. The guy has good athleticism, great arm talent, but it is under duress that he has struggled mightily here. But I take issue with the idea of the most talented thrower of the football that the 49ers have ever had, because there is this guy right back there, Joe frickin' Montana, who doesn't get the credit the man deserves for his own athleticism, his own ability to spin the pigskin. So to me, this was, I'm not putting Sam Darnold above freaking, I'm not putting him above Joe Cool. I'm not putting him above Steve Young. And there's probably a few other old-timey quarterbacks that I'm not putting him above either. I don't know if I'm putting him above John Brody. Arm talent-wise, I probably am. But to me, this felt like a bit of exaggeration here. Do you agree or disagree with Mr. Maiocco as far as arm talent goes?
Maiocco, way to take a stand, bud. Way to do it. I love it.
It was bold.
I love it. And arm talent, he's literally talking about throwing the football. He's not talking about him being a quarterback. He's not talking about him managing a team or his reputation or being around the league, right? Talking about pure arm talent, right? Montana didn't have a cannon. Steve Young had a pretty decent arm, but wasn't elite. Kaepernick had elite arm talent, but not elite ball placement, right? There's a lot of guys that had this or that, but Darnold, if you look at his scouting report, which is his talent as a quarterback, desired NFL size, looks off safeties, not afraid to isolate wide receivers, to throw one-on-one downfield, trust his arm and place it, natural talent with tight spirals, all this kind of stuff. He has all the arm talent in the world. He just has not been a quarterback. And so, like, you know, like I have no problem with him saying that. Is it the best arm talent that the Niners ever had? Yeah, that's probably hyperbole, and then he backs off and says elite. But the talent isn't what people have said about Sam Darnold. The Sam Darnold can't play quarterback. Your arm talent is only one part of the game. Do you get flustered with the rush? Are you able to make the right decisions? Are you able to do those things? But just popping back, like he said, 7-on-7 and hit the wide receivers in stride and make throws that people can't. There's some things that people can't do. That was the one thing that people took exception with my evaluation of Brock Purdy. He doesn't have a cannon of an arm. He's not going to be able to make throws that people can make. If you put Sam Darnold's highlight reel tape up with anybody's, you would think he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Now, if you put his negative tape up with anybody's, you think he's out of the league. So, like, that's where the hyperbole is. And it kind of reminds me of the Amish rifle, or Fitzmagic, if you will, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ooh. Right? Great arm talent. But he just throws the ball wherever he wants to. Not consistent, not able to stay on a team. He has stretches of 5 to 6 games where he looks unbeatable and then goes back down to earth. You know, he has a negative record as a quarterback, but he throws for over 60%, a fair amount of touchdowns, more than interceptions. He's just not the gamer, like where he comes in for a consistent stretch for a full season and is able to put it together.
Yeah.
That's what Darnold reminds of. Like over Carolina, look at the first 6 games in Carolina, right? They were winning games. Yep. I was talking about Carolina winning that division. Their defense looked good. Sam Darnold looked like took a breath of fresh air. CMC was healthy. DJ Moore was getting fed the ball. Like, I thought that team had all it takes. I think he had 8 rushing touchdowns in the red zone, was using some of that sub-5 speed to get into the end zone. It looked like it was all coming together, and then fell off a cliff, and he was nowhere to be seen for the rest of the season until the second half. And in the second half, he was okay, but it wasn't like anything earth-shattering. I think that you look at
good, yeah.
You look at Darnold. I look at Darnold in this aspect. In Shanahan's offense, Shanahan probably thinks that he could win games with him if necessary, and that's all he needs to be. Like, I don't see him taking Lance's position. I don't see him taking Purdy's position.
No,
I think Shanahan goes in his own hubris, because we know that's what Shanahan likes to do. I see all the elite traits, and he does have a lot of elite traits with his arm. I can mold that. I can make him a comparable quarterback if I need to be.
Right.
And the flyer is not deep. Like, you look at Tampa Bay, took an $8 million flyer on Baker Mayfield, who's proven over and over again that he can't be a quarterback, just like Darnold.
That's a big swing.
We're not, and he's going to start for that team.
Yeesh.
So we're not taking that big of a swing. We're taking, hey, he's most likely going to be our backup, because Purdy's going to be on the IR. If Purdy's not on the IR, we can make the decision. We didn't pay him that much money. Most of it is incentive-based. But as far as throwing of the football, the guy's got a cannon. He can place it anywhere he wants to play. He can make off-script plays. He has the speed to get out of the pocket. Like, some of this, like I was saying, his highlight reel tape is ridiculous.
It is.
It is so good. But he just never can consistently do it on a day-to-day basis. That's why I think Fitzpatrick is an operable comp, because some of the throws you see Fitzmagic make, like, you're like, holy crap, why is this guy not in the Pro Bowl? Like,
right.
And
it's unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm with you on that. And Randall Riley loves the comp with Fitzpatrick, and also brings some other good names into the conversation, in that arm talent does not necessarily equate to winning. Jim Druckenmiller had good arm talent. I don't know if I'm going amazing arm talent, at least not in the league, but yes, did not translate. Jeff George, phenomenal arm talent, no doubt about it. And what I will say, to you also made this point, but James Schaefer comes in, our newest member of the sneakerhead community, saying Darnold has not been in position yet to prove that statement true. And that, I think, is where he's at, and why he probably chose San Francisco, is it puts him in the best position possible to take that arm talent and turn everything else around, because it is the mental side of the game. It is the ability to limit the turnovers that really would turn Sam Darnold into a starting caliber quarterback. He definitely has the arm. He definitely has the athleticism. He has all of the physical traits that you would want. has not been able to put it together yet. It is fair to point out 5 different offensive coordinators in 5 seasons. I mean, it is a ridiculous, almost like, and Matt Maiocco said this in his podcast, or maybe it was Jennifer Lee Chan, talked about it almost mirrors an Alex Smith start to his career. And you can see that, like, while those redemption stories are rare, they do on occasion happen. And I will say that while I'm not going to hold my breath for Sam Darnold to reemerge as that same talent that got him drafted 3rd overall, I do think he's put himself in the best possible position to be successful. To your point, probably puts himself in the possibility of being the backup quarterback here if the 49ers decide, hey, we don't need depth at quarterback. We want to move one of our more viable quarterback options for an asset at that point. Having a Sam Darnold as your backup plan is a quality backup plan. Far better than going out and spending $8 million on Baker Mayfield and saying, hey, yeah, we're going to start you. So I'm comfortable with Darnold. I think it's a great addition. I do think that this is a bit of hyperbole by Matt Maiocco in the most talented thrower. He is a very talented thrower. I just hope he puts it all together and becomes a solid backup quarterback for us.
The Niners are going to start 3. The Niners are going to have 3 quarterbacks every single game this season.
That seems likely.
It's just going to be out of fear. Like, it's going to be pure fear.
Just out of PTSD.
Yeah. It's like Final Destination. Like, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And so Kyle Shanahan's going to have 3 quarterbacks suited up every Sunday.
I will say I agree with folks that are talking about his processing speed and that's something that can't be fixed. That does appear to be one of the issues for him, that he cannot see what is on the field, process it, and then make the appropriate throw, hence the seeing ghosts comment. All right, we are wrapping this thing up on quarterbacks.
Or he's trying to play hero ball. So if you look at a lot of...
Force it in.
If you look at a lot of people...
Fitzpatrick for you.
Yeah. If you look at a lot of people in his college scouting tape, his junior year, he had way more talent around him, so he didn't need to be the guy. His senior year, all his talent left, and he tried to play hero ball, holding the ball, throwing it downfield, trying to take all these deep shots. And so maybe he's trying to do that.
It certainly would seem fitting for the teams he was on there in New York. We lost you for just a second, but I can see you are back now. Yeah, to me, again, that feels like another coffee situation where it's like, hey, wait and see whether or not Sam Darnold can improve as a quarterback, not as a passer, because he is a phenomenal passer. All right, let's talk lastly about
sugars on that one.
3 sugars. You're sipping that one for a while, my friend. Yeah. Kyle Brandt came out with some quarterback rankings here, and I take fucking issue, sir. Excuse my F-bomb, but I am upset. Anytime you put our starting quarterback next to Baker Mayfield, that is just going to get me riled up. So Kyle Brandt comes out and puts Jalen Hurts tier 1. I can't necessarily dispute that. Then Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, and Matthew Stafford in tier 2. You have Derek Carr, Goff, and Geno Smith in tier 3. Falling down to Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, and Kyler Murray in tier 4. And then finally, tier 5, Baker Mayfield and Brock Purdy, as you see there on that graphic. The only players below Purdy in the NFC, according to Kyle Brandt, you have Love and a bunch of unknowns. Do you take offense, as I do, on Brock Purdy being placed here in tier 5, or do you think that this is fairly appropriate?
So is this is this what happened based off of last year? Is it like, I don't know where the definition of this is. This going into next season? So there might be, because last year Stafford didn't play as much. So maybe we'll just say going into next season is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it's based off of performance from last year going into this season expectations.
I have no problem with Purdy at 5, right? I mean, I don't think that, he proved 8 games. He was with the best roster. He's gonna, if it's about going into next season, his injuries got to play into it, right? So maybe maybe that has to do with his injury. You're looking at all the arm talent going for the rest of those guys up there. They all have better arm talent than Purdy. So maybe that's where it's at. Maybe it's an injury thing / arm talent thing, if it's about the stats, solely the stats they put up last season, and that's solely what it's about, then yeah, he's way too low.
Yeah, this to me, like I'm with Joey Nichols on this one. LOL, Baker, come on, bro. Like when you look at someone who has tried and failed, or at least proven himself to be far more in the average category, Baker Mayfield feels like an appropriate placement at tier 5. When I look at Jordan Love, who was clearly drafted to be Aaron Rodgers' replacement, and then you had to backtrack some, like again, I see that as being appropriate. When you bring up the injury, that sways me a little bit. If that was taken into account, then I can at least get on board with the unknown. But to me, I struggle seeing Geno Smith and Jared Goff in tier 3. Now, Goff has earned that redemption story a little bit. And Geno Smith, certainly Pro Bowler coming out of last year, wowed the hell out of me, did way more than I thought he was going to do at the position with Seattle. I'm still predicting a bit of regression for Geno Smith. I see some of these names ahead, and it just bothers me to see Purdy, who, aside from the injury that knocked him out of the NFC Championship game, felt like he was on a destined path to go win the Super Bowl, undefeated season. It just, to me, it doesn't recognize the special nature of what Brock Purdy was able to do in coming in last season, and I'm taking offense to it.
Take offense, my man. That's what America's all about.
It is, right? I mean, we got to internalize that, take it very personally, and then spew hate back at those that disagree with us. That seems to be our way.
I mean, I look at the list. There's nothing too egregious here for me. I mean, Cousins throws for 4,000 yards every single season. Prescott is, the Cowboys are always in the hunt, even though they don't perform in the playoffs. Stafford just won a ring. Carr is always those, hey, I have immense talent, but never puts it together on the field. You could arguably say that his talent on the Saints has superseded anything he's ever had in the Raiders, so maybe that's why his tier is up there. Goff threw over for 4,000 yards. Geno Smith was comeback player of the year, and had the highest completion percentage of any NFL quarterback last season. So, like, I could see all those things. And then it just seems like tier 4, I would put Purdy probably in tier 4 if it were me, like being realistic.
I wouldn't be offended in tier 4.
It's like, okay, Jones had one good season. Is he really a quarterback that deserved that contract? Fields had a good second half of last season where he put it all together. Murray plays too many video games and Purdy's injured. Like, that would be like my, like, tier 4 is like, hey, we've seen some talent, but there's a lot of indecision going there. My thing is here is, why is Bryce Young tier 7? Like, what do the people in tier 6 have that Bryce Young doesn't have? Like, they haven't played any game. Like, they haven't done anything in the NFL.
Right.
Like, Jordan Love has held Aaron Rodgers' jockstrap for 3 straight seasons. Like, what he has proves more than Bryce Young. Like I don't understand the tier 6-7 split there. I think that just is pure shade on Kyle Brandt's part. But
throwing shade
So I would put Purdy probably in the tier 4 for me. Like, I don't think he's the quarterback of Carr, Goff, and Smith, because I think they've all had more years in the league, more experience, a little bit more arm talent, and they're not coming off an injury. So that's kind of where I would put that in. I think, like I said, tier 4, you all have something to like and not like about those quarterbacks.
Right.
Purdy being the injury part.
Right. And that to me would be more reasonable. If I'm going NFL football, whatever the name of their show is, Good Morning Football, I'm a Peter Schrager guy. So any chance I get to take a shot at Kyle Brandt, who came on in the draft decked out in his Bills gear, being as biased as possible, which I actually respected. That actually brought Kyle up a notch. And I will say, he and Peter Schrager have a phenomenal freaking back and forth rapport going on. Randall Riley is in agreement that 4 is fair. Randall also went on to point out that his AFC picks were equally atrocious, that he had Jimmy G above Trevor Lawrence and some other things. Obviously, this is opinion, and that's what makes it fun to disagree, right? It's easy to come out and poke fun at Kyle. Kyle doesn't matter. Kyle doesn't mind at all. He's on his nationally syndicated program, just counting the ducats and laughing about us balking at this ranking here. But this will truly be the season.
By the way, love the
whomever,
show. Have me on. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Let's get Kyle on this show. Yeah, any whichever quarterback ends up starting the vast majority of games for the 49ers will be able to prove where they truly belong on this list, and we'll be able to look back. I think what is fair to say is that Brock Purdy does still have things to prove, as does Trey Lance, as does every quarterback on the 49ers roster.
Here's a fun exercise. If all three of our quarterbacks played a full season, so if Purdy's healthy, plays a full season, Lance is healthy, he starts a full season, Darnold, for some reason, gets the starting job, plays a full season, where do you think at the end of said season they'll be ranked in the 2024 rankings?
Ooh, if all of them played for the Niners, like in a parallel universe, they're all playing with the same skill position players. They're all playing for the Niners.
Yeah, let's Doctor Strange this and go to different dimensions here.
I love it. Different dimensions. I think each one of them makes the playoffs. I think, man, I'm tempted to say that almost any of the three could get the Niners back to the NFC Championship game. I'm very hesitant to say that with Sam Darnold. I think that what you would end up seeing is Sam Darnold somewhere in the middle there, finding himself either in the tier 4 or tier 5 range, which would be up from where his past performances would put him. I would
Darnold's
think
in tier 15 right now, so yeah, that'd be a big jump.
He's in tier 38 all by himself, and then call me foolish, but like I still fully believe in Trey Lance and his ability to show why the 49ers drafted him at 3. I would say that Trey Lance would fall into that tier 2 range, tier 3 range, and then I would put Brock Purdy slightly ahead of that in tier 2. I still, based off of what I have seen from both players, have slightly higher expectations for Brock because I go with, hey, I've seen it happen. Whereas with Lance, I'm projecting that it's going to happen. I'm projecting that he will take those strides. So I'd say Brock tier 2, Lance 3, and then Darnold in that 4 to 5 range. How would you see it?
I would say Darnold probably in the 4 range, maybe 3 because of the draft capital that he once had. Like you could see the headlines like, Darnold finally gets an offensive coordinator and his talent is finally, put forth to what goes on and all this kind of stuff like that. So I could see him being in the 3. I would probably put him in the 4 range at that point, or I could see him be more in the 4 range. Hey, like he had one good season. It was only Kyle Shanahan. Look at the roster around him. What did he do elsewhere? I think Purdy would still be in the 3 range. I think Purdy's cap is going to be like the Jimmy Garoppolo type talent base. Like, he wins, but he's not like athletically gifted.
Right.
He's a good thrower, not a great thrower. And he'll be in that middle range, but he wins games. If Lance takes this team to the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, or just even has a phenomenal season, say he throws for, 4,000 yards and 30-some plus touchdowns, just goes ham. He's tier 2, if not up there with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Like that's where he'll be because Hurts has only had one good season.
That's right. I was just going to say, I think you put him up there with Hurts if he does that.
So you're looking at, and because it'll all align. It'll be draft stock. He has all the athletic talent you could possibly want, and he put together a great season, led a team far in the playoffs. Yeah. He would be tier 1, tier 2.
Yeah,
like
I think that's fair because you're adding multiple factors in there, right? You're taking multiple things into consideration, which I'm guessing Kyle Brandt did here as well. But we were obviously not privy to his logic going into it. Well, I love ending on that debate. And I love the fact that we've disagreed on several things tonight, but we've done it with such amazing bravado and friendship. That is just wonderful. I appreciate everybody that is here in the chat. Randon, thank you so much, as always, for being a part of this phenomenal Between Two Beards program, good sir.
Wouldn't have it any other way, my man.
Yes, sir. Every week, week in, week out, rain or shine, except for sickness and the occasional week that we take off. We are here all the time. Randon and I talking Niners. Is no better time than talking football. Darren doing the good deed on your way out. If you're watching, please do, in fact, smash that like button, as Darren suggests. Down below in the description of the video are the links that you can use to follow Randon on Twitter and YouTube, to follow along with the Hockey Royalty podcast that he is a part of. Go and support that. Randon, do you have any games coming up that you're excited about in the hockey format? Not that anyone here cares about hockey, but figured I'd ask. It is the playoffs.
So, I mean, my Kings lost. We're out of the playoffs.
Yep.
But I'm gonna pander to your Shark fans here. The lottery is coming up, which means the Sharks get the number 1 overall pick. Bedard is a generational talent.
Generational. Uh-oh, he was just about to brag on him, but then he froze up. It's the football gods. Football gods said, no, you can't. And there he is. He's back. All right, so you said generational talent.
Generational talent. He got early entry into the Canadian Hockey League, so he's been playing since he's like 14. He had more points in the World Juniors than Wayne Gretzky. He was averaging over 2 points per game in the Junior League this year. This kid is an absolute dog. Like, he's just so good at what he does. Generational type talent since Connor McDavid. Sharks have a chance to get him. I think they are the 4th highest odds. So I think it's only 6-point-something%. But this is the deepest draft since 2006. There's legit 4 guys in the top that would have been the number 1 overall pick last year.
Man.
So like, you have him, you have Adam Vintilli, who played for Michigan, absolute monster. You have Michkov, who's the Russian missile. He's like 170 pounds of pure energy.
That's what I want, the Russian missile.
And then you have Leo Carlson out of Sweden. Like, there's a lot of good top picks. The Sharks have an opportunity to get a great player. So if you like hockey at all, the lottery is coming up, and you have a chance to get somebody good for your franchise to pair well with William Eklund, who was a top 10 pick of a couple years ago.
There you have it. Hockey fans, Shark fans, all your inside information. Good info. Randall coming in to say King Gretzky. Indeed, that's a name I recognize, unlike those that are getting drafted. Harold coming in late to say missed the show, but I will rewatch it. Harold, good to see you in here. And yes, to all Bay Area teams, the Sharks go Sharks, the Warriors go Warriors, and Waveware saying go Oilers.
That's a low blow.
I'll take it.
Low blow.
I'll take it. All right. So amazing show. I had a great time with it. Randon, thank you as always. We will be back on next week. Keep an eye on Twitter to see whether that will be the usual Wednesday night or the occasional Thursday night, as we have been doing recently. We will announce that on Twitter. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, you know the drill. Cheers, faithful.